Hi, this is Greg Lanier from Reformed Theological Seminary, and it's my pleasure to be doing a few Septuagint-focused daily doses of Greek over the next few days. We'll be taking a look at a handful of passages from the Greek Old Testament that often have Christological significance, picking up today in Genesis 3:15. Let's read it together. Kai ekthron theso anamesan su, kai anamesan tes gunakos, kai anamesan tu spermatasu, kai anamesan tu spermatas aptes. Altas su terese kephalein, kai su tereses altu ternon. We'll begin with the first noun here that's slightly fronted. It is ekthron, accusative singular feminine from ekthra, which means enmity or hostility. And then our main verb in this first line is theso, future active indicative first singular from the athematic verb tithemi, which means to put or to place. So something like, and I will put enmity. Then we have a fourfold repetition of a preposition anamezon, which with the genitive means between, and the repetition here is modeled on the Hebrew where it's also repeated. So something like between you, Sue, which refers back to the ophis, the serpent in 3:1, and between the woman, referring back to Eve. And then we have kai anamesan to spermatos, so, and between the seed or offspring. You'll notice that is a third declension genitive from sperma, which is the translation there of the Hebrew zera. It's kind of a collective plural noun. So it's between your offspring and then between her offspring, to spermatos altes. Lastly, we have altasu terese kephalein. The su there, referring back again to the serpent, matches up with the kephale, so it's your head. The verb here is an interesting choice. This is a very famous or very common word from early studies of Greek, tereo. Here it is a future active indicative. In this case, third singular for this first instance. It's a second singular in the other highlighted instance. And it means to observe or perhaps to guard against, to spy out in this case. It's an interesting choice because the underlying Hebrew is the word shuf, which is difficult to translate, but it's something like to bruise, perhaps, to strike, to rub against. It has much more violent connotations. But the Greek translator has chosen tereo. And so this first line would be, he will guard against, perhaps, something like that, your head, and then you will guard against his ternon, which is heel. You will guard against his heel. So we're left with this translation here is almost a messianic standoff, not necessarily a violent conflict, as you're probably used to from the Hebrew, but some sort of mutual espionage. What's interesting is some of the other translators in the early period did try to use a verb that is more violent in nature to try to pick up on that from the Hebrew. So Aquila uses prostribo, Symmachus thalibo, and some others like tribo and play. So all of those mean something like to strike against, to bruise, something like that. Now, Genesis 3:15 is not directly cited anywhere in the New Testament. The closest place is Romans 16:20. And if that is indeed an allusion to Genesis 3:15, it's interesting that Paul uses suntribo, similar to some of these other translators, which has a sort of trampling or some sort of beating up sort of context, as opposed to tereo, which does not. So that is Genesis 3:15 in the Greek.